We've got Troy Eklund here in studio. We've had some technical issues here at our show here today. Troy, SEC Network analyst, he's going to be on the call here in a little bit when Arkansas plays OU over at Baum Walker Stadium. It's going to be a 4 o'clock first pitch instead of a 6 o'clock first pitch tonight because of the weather. You look at OU, Troy, and as people have asked me about Oklahoma this week, really the thing that I think when you play a team like Oklahoma, it really puts a lot of pressure on you being fundamentally sound at all times. And that's not a knock against other teams, but when you got a team that, they're pretty good fielding, they can pitch for the most part, and they got a lot of power arms. I mean, this may be one of the Florida had a lot of power arms, but Oklahoma, I think they're right there with Florida just in terms of the gas, so to speak, they can bring out of their bullpen. But it's the base running, it's the pressure that they want to put on you when they get on the bases. That puts a lot of stress on you. And I feel like maybe that accumulates a little bit over 9 innings on a given day or 27 innings on the weekend.
Well, speed creates a lot of problems. And so it makes you as an infielder speed up on ground balls. And so you might, rush a little bit or rush a throw and it might sail. When you get guys on base, this is a team, like you said, Matt, that they've attempted 120 stolen bases this year. So
he's successful at 102.
So they can really run. I think in league play, they're 40 of 51, a little bit, maybe guys hold them on a little bit better, but they're going to push the envelope. And with the way that, Baum Walker normally plays with that wind blowing in from out right field, it kind of is conducive for that type of an offense. But yeah, I agree that they're gonna put pressure on the defense, and in little things like you might see a few more fastballs thrown, and because of Ryder Helfrich, I'm gonna try to throw this guy out. You might see some pitchers trying to maybe speed up their motion to the plate, slide step, and they're not used to it, or even they just don't lift that knee at quite as high, and then maybe that pitch, instead of being a strike, now it sails, and so. There's a lot of little things in the game inside the game, so to speak, of what speed will do. But yeah, I think this is going to be interesting, and Arkansas is going to have to be tight.
I forget who Arkansas was playing earlier this year. There was a team that liked to run quite a bit. Maybe it was Mississippi State, but you saw a ton of pickoff moves. I mean, they were really conscious of trying to slow things down. May make for some longer games too.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's no rule in college baseball and in the SEC where you don't have a limited number of picks like you do in the big leagues. So you're right. That'll be called a lot more often. And it sometimes I think it just gets in the head of the pitcher, and they just lose focus instead of really concentrating on that batter. So for Arkansas, they're going to have to kind of be dual focused with the runner and the batter at the plate.
I was trying to find this graphic that Arkansas put out yesterday. Here it is on Ryder Helfrich. Just talking about, how good he's been, defensive runs saved, framing rate. We wrote this week that, teams have run on Arkansas less this year than I think any other team in the SEC. Now, I think that comes with a little bit of an asterisk. They haven't played Oklahoma and they haven't played Kentucky, right, and two highest steal rate teams in the league, and they played them here over the next couple of weeks. But there's so much emphasis, I feel like, that's put on how does a catcher do? Like caught stealing, it feels like that's the catcher stat, when really there's a lot that goes into, the pitcher being responsible for that. All that's a long-winded way to say, what have you seen from Hunter Dietz and his ability to hold runners this year?
He's been pretty good. I would say he's maybe a little above average. Now, he doesn't have some of the pickoff moves that some of the Ole Miss pitchers had last weekend that were just phenomenal. But I think he's solid, and even at 6'6", he delivers the baseball pretty quickly to the plate. I want to say I think he's around 1.3, and if you can be in that range, you're going to give your catcher a shot.
Gabe Gackel's been a little bit slower to the plate this year, and he was one, again, in that series, and I forget who they were playing, but you saw a ton of pickoff attempts from him on that Friday night.
Well, the thing for Gackel is he's super athletic, and he's got a very quick move, so he's got quick feet, which means that you can spin to first and have a quicker move over there. And, he's not afraid to throw the ball hard over there as well, too. So Carter Rittenbar, he got thrown into the fire pretty quickly if Gackel's on the mound throwing BBs over there at him.
That's a good point you just made. They don't have Reese Robinette, who's their best defensive first baseman. He's going to be out at least for this game today. We talked to Dave Van Horn about him earlier this week, and I think the way he said it was that they're not going to completely, or at that point in time, and this is before they had practiced, they weren't going to completely rule him out for the weekend. Maybe he could come in and play defense or something. Although he is out on the availability report for tonight's game, or for today's game. I got to get over calling it tonight with this weather delay. But Rudenbart. I mean, that's a big key this weekend because he's gonna be dealing with a lot of those pickoff throws over the first.
Yeah, and the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Reese Robinette's probably at least 3, maybe even 4 inches taller than Carter, and then your wingspan's longer. So again, another factor to kind of put in the back of that pitcher's mind is like, hey, I need to pick more. I got to be quick to try to maybe cut down that lead, but then, also I've got a 5'11" guy instead of a 6'3" guy that has really long arms.
There's so many different things that go into bed. My wife never liked baseball until we met. And then it kind of opened up her eyes. Like, there's so much strategy here, and what if this happens, and what if that happens, and it's what makes the sport so much fun.
It really does, and we you always call it the game inside the game.
Yeah.
And people ask me, well, do you really enjoy broadcasting? And I said, yeah. I was doing it in the stands, and I was driving, anybody that was around me crazy because I talk about everything that I talk about on the air of the broadcast. So I've been doing that for a while.
Bubba comes in here twice a week, Bubba Carpenter, and he says that I feel like I'm coaching the game on the radio. He's like, that's kind of how I feel what color analyst is for me, is I'm just coaching the game. I'm saying, here's what I would do here. Here's what I would do there. And I guess it's probably a little bit of the same for you.
Yeah, it is. And Bubba's got, so we both played together. He's 2 years younger than me. So we've got, I'm seeing a lot of baseball between the two of us. So yeah, I think it's fun kind of trying to predict, so to speak, a little bit of what's going to happen, or even if you explain why a coach might do something in a certain situation.
Got Troy Eklund in here with us, Razorback All-America, former Razorback All-American. You and Bubba played together. I think maybe we've talked about this before, but I wonder what that's like going to the ballpark, 35, 40 times a year and seeing your old teammate there.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So he was a guy that was super talented, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to play him. And there was, he was played some outfield, some first base. You could just see with his, just the raw skill set that he had, that he was going to take it to the next level. But yeah, it's good. We go back and have some good old Norm DeBride stories for sure.
It was so much fun this year. Norm went into the College Baseball Hall of Fame and getting to kind of go back and I probably talked to close to 20 people who played for him and across all these different decades. Like, I found somebody who played on his first team. I played somebody, who played on his last team. And it's just kind of interesting to hear how the stories changed and how they were also kind of the same from people who saw Norm DeBryan when he was 30 and they saw him when he was 60.
Well, I think you could almost say a little bit of the same thing about Dave Van Horn. They both mellow out a little bit more. The little things that maybe don't bother him as much. I was actually talking to Coach Bryan last weekend a little bit, and I told him one of the things that I really liked about him is if the team won the game, that he never brought up anything negative. And I said, why did you do that? And he said, well, the game's hard enough as it is. I thought if we won that I just didn't need to harp on anybody about that. So you could have some really bad things. And as players, when you screw up and okay, I can't make that same mistake. But I thought that was a pretty good trait from a coach of having not bringing up, bad things, just to have you a negative thought in your head, stay with the positive.
I forget exactly how Dave said it, but he said something 3 or 4 years ago. He said the thing that has helped his mood the most during a game is replay review. He doesn't have to get worked up and go out there and argue with the umpires. He just put your hand over your ears and go from there.
That's right. The thing that I hope the SEC adopts next season is the strike zone in the dugout. So like even on the broadcast, we don't need to see it. And I talked to Matt Hobbs one time, and he goes, we had a game last year at Ole Miss. And he said it was the first game that the game got moved up like today. He said for whatever reason, they forgot to turn it off in the dugout because you have it for non-conference games. And so he goes, it was the best game ever. He said neither side argued because you could see the balls as strikes. And people don't realize this, but I want to say it's like 96 or 97% accuracy of the umpires in the SEC. It's phenomenal how
they've been graded on TrackMan for a lot longer than umpires in other conferences.
Yeah, and they're phenomenal at what they do. And so it's what they need to do is adopt what they do in the big leagues is just if you argue, you get kicked out of the game. And so, but Hobbs said, he goes, yeah, there wasn't any arguing because everybody could see if that pitch was a ball, and so you just would let it go.
We've talked about this before in this TrackMan deal where you can't see the strike zone during SEC games, but you can during non-conference, like you just mentioned. And I have thought that it was because there was fear that there was going to be an immature coach who's going to run out of the dugout with his iPad and say, you see what you just did? And I am of the opinion, now maybe I'm giving people too much credit, I don't know, but that the coaches can be professional. Like you can treat them I think at some point that's coming to where the SEC coaches are going to be able to have that information in the dugout. I think it helps them become better coaches during the game when they're able to say, hey, look what you just did on that 1-2 pitch that you missed to your arm side, or whatever the case might be.
I think so. They get all the other analytics, but so next year is a rule change year for the SEC. So it's every other year is a rule change year. So I would not be surprised if that doesn't happen. But the neat thing about all the stats is Matt Hobbs is just great to talk to. And one of the things he talked about was, he said, not even sometimes you think about as a guy getting tired of velocity, because we look at things like, their release point. Is their release point shorter than what it normally is? And so he said, even little indicators like that can help coaches be better coaches, like you said.
And of course, ABS may be coming to the SEC regular season right here. I mean, we all know where this is going. They're testing it at the tournament in a couple of weeks. And anytime anything ever gets tested at the tournament, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to be in the regular season within a year or two.
Yeah, I think so. That's the proving ground of it. See what the coaches like, the players like. But at the end of the day, you want the call to be right.
Yeah.
And so it really, balls and strikes really turn the complexion of that bat. Because if somebody that hasn't played baseball, it's a big deal to be 2 balls, 1 strike instead of 1 ball, 2 strikes.
Yep.
And it just completely changes the way that you approach that at bat.
Or even 1-0-0-1.
Oh, 100%.
I think about the umpire who was behind the plate for the third game of the Georgia series when it's 40-26.
Yeah.
Or no, 26-14. It might have been 40-20. It felt like it. But 26 runs, 40 total for Georgia. I thought the umpire that day really, like he was an old Major League Baseball umpire. And I know the belief that if you're an umpire at the college level, you got to call a college strike zone. And a college strike zone is different than a major league strike zone. And you got to give these pitchers the corners in college. And he was not giving them the pitchers or the outside pitches. And I told people time and again, I said, if you want to know whether there were 40 runs and 35 hits and 19 walks, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you've got an umpire behind the plate who's forcing these pitchers, game 3 pitchers, mind you, to throw it over the plate on a day when it's windy, balls flying all over the park. I think the umpires do a pretty good job for the most part, but every now and then you can get one that even if by the letter of the law it's right, I don't know. I feel like for college umpires, you got to have a little give there, and I don't know how much ABS is going to give that flexibility. That's going to be really interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, the term that the SEC umpires use is they want the guy who's over the whole league for the umpires. His name is Paul Gillier. He's been was an umpire forever in the SEC, and now he's over all the umpires. And his term is, he calls it the buffer zone. Mm-hmm. And he said, we want the pitch in the buffer zone to be called. Mm-hmm. And I get it, because these guys are not big league pitchers. They're still struggling with command a little bit. So if you have a pitch that's in that buffer zone, the hitters know the zone, and so there are even balls that they're hittable. It's not like, okay, you're calling pitches that they're unhittable.
As of right now, we don't know who OU's throwing today.
No,
I mean, I've been sitting here kind of refreshing all day, seeing if they're going to name it. They've got TBA today. Arkansas's got TBA tomorrow and Sunday. I think I know why both teams are doing this. I mean, OU, they've had a little bit of an issue with their Friday night. LJ Mercurius, who was their Friday night guy for a good bit of the season, they took him out of that role last week, put him in the bullpen, basically used an opener on Friday night against Florida. So we'll see. I mean, I think we kind of have an idea of who the pitchers might be, but who the exact guy that goes out there for the start is not. And then for Arkansas, I think they want to have some flexibility with what they do with Gabe Gackle. Like if you need Gabe Gackle, let's say Hunter Dietz is only able to give you 5 innings, but they're good innings and you've got the lead, and you need Gabe Gackle to give you a 2 or 3 inning bridge to McIlvain today, you go ahead and do that. If they have their druthers, I think they want to keep Gackle in a starter role this weekend, but I don't know in all the years that I've been doing college baseball, if I've ever seen where there's a TBA every single day and both teams are contributing to the TBA.
Yeah, it's very unusual, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I think for Big Ed Ord, it's win that Friday game. Figure it out after that. They've got some good arms. You can go with Gibbler. You've got Fisher. McGuire actually threw pretty well last weekend. And that's why the game got moved up as well, because you've got a guy like Hunter Dietz, who's probably, hands down the most dominant pitcher in the SEC, and you don't want that game to get called after he throws 3 innings, maybe 4. If he can go 6, then or even 7, if he's really efficient, we want to definitely get that game in. But you got to win game 1 and figure it out from there.
What do you see from Dietz this year? Because I keep waiting for him, and it's just the law of averages. Pitchers are going to have an off day. But it's been like 5 weeks in a row for him where he's been going against the other team's number 1 guy and pitching at a really high level.
Well, the fastball is really good. I think that the scouts have his fastball ranked at like a 70, which is phenomenal.
On an 80 grade.
On an 80 grade. It's phenomenal. And he can throw for a strike. It's not only is it hard, he sits, 96, 97, but, he's got good commando. He can move it around different sides of the plate. I think the thing that's made Hunter Dietz so much better is the cutter. He had the cutter all year long. I remember watching him in the fall, and every time he tried to throw a curveball, and the big thing you can do is like, well, how do you tell? If you watch the scoreboard, the velocity, it's about 80 miles an hour, and it was ending up at the left-hand batter's head, and it would fit. That's where it would finish. And now he's finishing it for a strike, and every once in a while, you'll see that one really kind of sail on him. He doesn't kind of get on top of it as well as he should, but I think that's the pitch that is making him so much better, because the fastball's hard, the cutter's pretty hard, and as a former hitter, I always wanted, if a guy just threw everything hard, I can hit them so much better than, you're going from 97 to 80 miles an hour to a breaking ball that's got a lot of depth. And so that's the pitch that makes him really good. He'll throw maybe 1 to 3 changeups a game. He doesn't need to with that breaking.
There was a stretch there this year for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks where the fastball just wasn't working for him and he was really having to depend on those off-speed pitches. The cutter's been really good for him this year. Curveball's been really good for him. But, man, it was like once he figured out the fastball, and I forget which week it was. So it's probably like maybe the 3rd or 4th week of the SEC season where you could really see, hey, this is starting to like it's starting to click for him. Everything else just seems to work so much better when he's got that going. And that's not rocket science.
Sure.
But for some pitchers, like the best pitchers, that fastball, being able to land that fastball just makes your off-speed pitches so much better.
Here's a funny little inside information on that. We were talking to Ryder Helfrich last weekend, and we're saying, "Hey, Ryder, does Hunter like shake you off or want to change up pitches?" And he just looks at it and he goes, "No." He goes, he throws whatever I call. He goes, the only time he shakes is you'll see, Ryder purposely saying, "Hey, you shake because I'm shaking my
fake shake."
A fake shake. And but it was pretty funny. He goes, "No, he doesn't think out there. He just throws whatever I call." So tremendous trust in Ryder Helfrich.
That's a great story there, and I think that has got to be so, I don't know, maybe like just freeing for a pitcher to be able to, hey, you don't have to think. You've got so much trust in your guy back there that he's going to have your best interest in mind. He's going to have the best pitches for you.
Right. I mean, between Matt Hobbs being in Ryder's here, and then they've already gone over the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just, that's just one less thing that the pitcher has to think about is because you're now this weekend you're talking about guys that can really run and things like that. So that's again, if you could take another thing off your mind, you're going to be that much better.
Arkansas was 5-7 in the SEC after they left Auburn, and they go into this series now. They're 13-11. They're tied for 6th in the SEC. There's some talk, we've had it on this show this week, about can they get a regional host spot. If they beat OU this weekend, they're going to stay in that conversation. But really, you look at, they got to play Missouri in the month of April. They got to play South Carolina in the month of March. So I feel like that kind of offsets each other a little bit. They've just played a lot better, it feels like, in the last 4 or 5 weeks. I wonder what you've seen different from them.
Well, you've got the number one person is Kagil Lloyd. So he's such an asset offensively. And if you could have him, because half the time he wasn't in the lineup because he was really struggling, and I tell you, when you've ever played the game of baseball and you're pressing, the ball looks like a BB and you can't see spin. And you'll see, like, why do you swing at that pitch? Because you literally hardly can see it. And then other times it looks like a beach ball. I always tell people, so that's why every kid from Little League to the big leagues will say on a 3-0 count, you'll say, hey, I would have hit a home run if you would have let me swing, coach. And you why? Because they weren't going to swing and they're relaxed and they could see that baseball. And that's what he's doing. His at-bats have been so much better, and it started with him getting drawing walks. And so you could tell that he was seeing the baseball better, has put in tremendous work. We get there before the games and watch him in BP. Coach Thompson has really worked with him. I think a guy like Zach Stewart, you've kind of seen flashes of Zach Stewart and what he can do at the plate. But I think that if you can get those two guys hot with the power they have, I mean, a lot of people don't realize it, that maybe not follow the Razorbacks, but Zach Stewart's the guy that has over 200 hits in collegiate career and 50 home runs. I mean, those are big numbers. And so you get a guy like that is going to start playing every day, that can start showing some of that power. I think those two are the two key guys, and then, Pompey's really kind of starting to come on and have better quality at bats as well, too.
More consistency in the lineup than I feel like they've had for a good portion of the season.
I think another point is, I think with other guys starting to hit, like a Stewart, like a Eloy, then you look like guys like Ryder Helfrich. It's allowed him to continue to be patient to play. Cam McCosiel was hitting sub 200 for a while in SEC play, but I think he felt so much pressure that, like, I've got to come up here and I've got to hit a double, triple, or home run because the people behind me aren't picking me up. And so I think that pressure's coming off. I think you start seeing Kozel even start hitting better. So it is contagious. And I think that those are the key players is Eloy and Stewart.
Didn't think Gackle pitched bad last week in a starting role against Ole Miss? And one of the things that he only threw 4 innings, and people are like, why did he come out of 4 innings? He got fought on Friday. And so, he pitched the equivalent of, maybe like an inning. When you think about the warm-up that he got on Friday that had, like an influence on potentially what happened on Sunday. But as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, like, the way this team was constructed, it was constructed for Dietz to be a starter. It was constructed for Gackle to be a starter. It was constructed for Kuhio Eloy to hit high in the lineup, probably as a cleanup guy.
Right.
Maybe we see that today. It wouldn't be surprising if we saw that today with the way he hit last week. Like, it's just taken a long time maybe for those pieces to come together. And who knows? Maybe that was just one good weekend and it doesn't come back together. But that was kind of my big takeaway from last weekend against Ole Miss was like, hey, you're starting to kind of see the pieces of this puzzle fit together that they were supposed to when the season began. It just took a long time to get to that point.
To me, I feel like that success is going to continue. And that's just not me, talking from my heart, but from my head. And I say that because I think when you start getting confidence on the mound, if you're Gackle, or confidence at plate at Eloy, you can just tell people's body mannerisms. Are they confident out there and they feel like that they're going to get the job done? You just carry yourself differently. And I think that this team definitely has the potential to get really hot and make a deep run.
How do you think this series is going to go? I don't want to ask you to make a prediction, but like how do you think this might play out this weekend? What are the keys to this weekend for both teams?
Yeah, I think for Arkansas, they've got to keep the base runners to a minimum, specifically maybe some certain base runners, and kind of make them earn it. If they're going to get a hit, so be it, but throw a lot of strikes. And so you might see Ryder Helfrich with Dietz throw maybe even more fastballs than he has. It's like they have got to pitch ahead. They've got to fill up the strike zone and make Oklahoma earn it. This is a team that's hitting around 230 in conference play. I kind of, at this point in the season, I'd flush most of the stats that are the season stats. It's like, okay, what are they doing in conference?
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a team that's not scary offensive from an average standpoint. They've got some pop, but and they also have some good arms. So you're gonna have maybe win some lower scoring games, especially if the wind's blowing in here. But I think that's kind of the key for Arkansas. My prediction is I think they could easily win 2 or 3. I think if they can win 2 or 3 this weekend, either maybe go on the road and win 2 or 3, win a game at Hoover, I think that kind of puts them in the really, to be in that hosting discussion. One thing I did look up is like, I go, who's in front of Arkansas in D1 baseball as far as ranking? And I go, well, West Virginia is in front of them a couple spots, I think, and they go to Kansas this weekend.
Yeah.
That is no easy task.
KU's the best team in the Big 12.
And then Arizona State goes to Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State at home, they can definitely beat
They
anyone.
just swept TCU in Stillwater last week.
That's right. So I think that it's boding well. Arkansas just has to take care of business themselves, and I think they can definitely be looking at post.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be I think they can be in the thick of it. I'm very interested to see, can they take the momentum of last week against Ole Miss and apply it to this week against Oklahoma. One thing that I've always said, I feel like this is one of the toughest weekends for a home team to play because you've got graduation, you're coming off of finals. We've seen more than one time where, whether it be Arkansas and Fayetteville, or maybe when Arkansas's gone on the road and played a team, that's been in a similar situation, where there's just so much going on around that sometimes you just don't get that team that's as crisp. And I think that's something that's interesting to watch this weekend too.
Yeah, distractions can definitely come be a factor, but I think that's where the experience of this coaching staff. You think about how long they've been together. They've been going on maybe 8 years together, 7 or 8,
6 years if you count Bobby in there too.
Right. And so I think that they just they'll talk through those things with these players, and I think they're going to be ready to play.
Troy, appreciate you coming in. Enjoy yourself on the broadcast this weekend. Troy's going to be on the broadcast with Brett Dolan all 3 games. As of right now, the game times are 4 today, 2 o'clock tomorrow, and then 1 o'clock on Sunday. I think there's a little bit of rain in the forecast Sunday.
Sunday may
Be something to watch a little bit. So, but Troy's going to be on SEC Network Plus. Appreciate you being in here. We'll be back on Monday. Bubba Carpenter will be in studio with us. We'll talk about this series against Oklahoma. Hope to see you then or at our website, bulldogsports.com. Have a great weekend.